Vicenzino to the stage. Do you want the glass of...
Good morning. Welcome to the conference. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers. Can you hear me clearly in the back? Just to make sure that, okay, perfect. This morning, my speech will be revolving around rising geopolitical instability. Obviously, from my original preparations, things have changed a bit in light of last weekend's tragic events in Paris. It's probably it's the largest single attack for French, at least for France since the Second World War. For Europe, it was the largest attack since the train bombings in Spain in 2004. Basically, when the attacks took place, President Hollande in France made a statement. He said, this is an act of war. Yes and no. I mean, my interpretation was that this was an act in an ongoing war, a war that's been going on for quite some time now. It actually marks a new phase in this ongoing war, whereby the radicals, there's several names, Daesh, ISIS, Islamic State, ISIL. For the sake of terminology, we'll just stick to the word ISIS, so we can just focus on that term. ISIS is taking its war west with this strike on Paris. Now, that's not just to say that it's exclusively in the West. We've looked at other places. In the last month alone, since early October, ISIS attacks outside of Iraq, outside of Syria, has claimed probably in the range of 500 lives. Just before the Paris attacks, there were suicide attacks in Beirut, which claimed over 40 lives. Now that it's been confirmed, the Russian airplane was downed by the ISIS affiliate called Sinai Province, over 220 dead. Remember October 10th in Turkey, in Ankara, suicide bombers claimed the lives of over 100 people. So, and then if you look at other attacks earlier this year, another attack in Turkey in the middle of July on a border town with Syria. You obviously had the Tunisia attacks, which claimed many holidaymakers in Tunisia. The attacks in Tunisia once again, early spring, when you had the attack on the Bardo Museum predominantly against tourists. So this conflict has been going on for a while, and I would say even several years in different manifestations. Now, all along, ISIS had been making threats. They've been making threats to attack Europe in recent months, and they followed up. So the expectations were there. International security services and intelligence services were aware that something would take place. The difficulty always is how and when. And in this particular case, it was on a massive scale. The worst case scenario, in my opinion, to a large extent has happened. It was a Mumbai-style attack. When I say Mumbai-style attack, I mean in 2008, when Islamic radicals had attacked the city of Mumbai. Same thing, simultaneous attacks, suicide bombers, simultaneous bombings. So that happened on European soil. It involves meticulous coordinating planning. The targets are highly symbolic, places where people gather, football stadiums, music halls, restaurants. It's a direct attack on the freedoms that people enjoy in the Western world. And then also, if you look at the timing is very much also, it was around the time of the G20 meeting, and at the end of the month in Paris, you'll be having the Global Climate Change Conference. And also, if you look in 2016, there'll be, for all the football fans, there'll be Euro 2016 in France itself, and that's going to be putting everyone on high alert. The purpose, obviously, it's instilling fear. What I say by instilling fear is interrupting with the security of living in a Western society. You also have, it's a recruiting tool. It shows that it strengthens its narrative. A lot of extremist groups, and particularly ISIS, has this narrative of the world against us. It's core to their entire ability to recruit their clients. Say the entire world is against Islam. We represent you. Come join us. Another purpose of the attack was also that aura of brutality and effectiveness and invincibility. Within jihadist circles, one of their key things is about having this aura. They've experienced in recent months, they've experienced territorial losses in Iraq itself. And on the day, and in parts of Syria, and on the day of the attack was the fall of the city of Sinjar, which is a key strategic point between the the capital of ISIS, which is Raqqa, and the second most important city, Mosul, being a city of over 1 million. So takeover of Sinjar was a blow for them strategically. France. Why France? France is a key member of the anti-ISIS coalition, which involves over 60 countries. And also France is on the forefront of anti-jihadist activities in Africa. For example, a place like Mali. And then if you look earlier this year, it wasn't just groups like ISIS, other jihadist groups. If you look at the January attacks, the Charlie Hebdo attacks earlier this year. But if you look at terrorism, the issue of terrorism in France and Europe, they're no strangers to terrorism. If you look at the 1970s, the 1980s, you look, for example, here in Italy, the Red Brigade, kidnapping of a prime minister, the bombing of the Bologna train station on August 2nd, 1980, which claimed over 80 lives. There has been violence in Europe in terms of terrorism in the 70s and the 80s. But the difference is that type of terrorism was secular and it was politically motivated. A lot of this jihadism is a new wave. It's more extreme. It's religiously inspired. France was one of the first countries in Western Europe to experience this type of religious-based extremism in the middle of the 90s, when there was spillover of the Algerian War, and Paris was under attack, its metro stations. So 20 years ago, you saw these type of attacks. The difference now is the scale and the magnitude was quite caught all of Europe off guard. And Europe, I think, is going to be waking up to new realities. Those new realities is of these type of bombings, not just in France, but throughout the continent. Just as right after the bombing itself, we saw earlier this week on Monday night, the friendly football match between Holland and the Netherlands and Germany, where Chancellor Merkel was supposed to attend, was canceled because of a bomb threat. So these are new realities, different from the 70s and 80s. It's coming from abroad. A lot of that was generated internally, that type of terrorism. Now, jihadists, we can call them ISIL types, like-minded individuals. They thrive on division and polarization. What I mean by that, they have this apocalyptic view, what I explained before. It's the world against us. They want to make it all believe that this clash of civilizations. In my opinion, it's not. It's a clash with criminals, very sophisticated, tech-savvy, and brutal criminals. But if you look at European society, particularly in places like France, one needs to be straightforward and direct. There is a gap between mainstream society and many, not all, but many members, citizens of the Muslim faith, and what they try to do in places like Belgium and France is to widen that gap. And Europe today has a decision to make. Either they allow these attacks to further divide society, to expand that wedge, or use that fuel to unite the European societies. And you look at and it's quite concerning when you see the amount of young recruits that are going to fight. We call them volunteers, going to Iraq, going to Syria. And this was a major attack whereby that fear all along and that concern of the fact that people would be going to these regions and coming back home to strike has become a reality. And not to be too pessimistic, to be too alarmist, one, as I said, should be expecting probably some more in the immediate future. So we have blowback.